Former President George W. Bush released this video as part of a large fundraiser or awareness event, and I want to play a big chunk of that.
Following 9/11, I saw a great nation rise as one to honor the brave, to grieve with the grieving, and to embrace unavoidable new duties. And I have no doubt, none at all, that this spirit of service and sacrifice is alive and well in America. Second, let us remember that empathy and simple kindness are essential, powerful tools of national recovery. Even at an appropriate social distance, we can find ways to be present in the lives of others, to ease their anxiety and share their burdens. Third, let's remember that the suffering we experience as a nation does not fall evenly. In the days to come, it will be especially important to care in practical ways for the elderly, the ill, and the unemployed. Finally, let us remember how small our differences are in the face of this shared threat. In the final analysis, we are not partisan combatants. We are human beings, equally vulnerable and equally wonderful in the sight of God. We rise or fall together, and we are determined to rise.
Two messages, really, that just jump out of that video. Number one, empathy, right? I feel what you are going through. And number two, we're in this together. We have to look beyond partisanship. What do you make of those messages, Doris?
I think it was an extraordinary use of words. I really do. When he called on empathy and kindness, what he's calling on is the most important quality in a leadership, in a people, to identify with other people. And then he said, suffering is not uneven. Suffering is not uneven. And what he meant by that is that the elderly and the unemployed are bearing the brunt of it more than others. You know what's so deep about saying that is the awareness of, yes, there may be times when we're going to wish that we could be back to work earlier. Yes, there may be times when the elderly are going to wish we could stay out longer to be safer for them. And he's calling for empathy for both people's points of view. And then to remember 9/11 and say how much better our nation is when we are together, not allow that partisanship to be still out there with us. It seemed to me it was a really important moment for the president to speak out. And then Clinton spoke out at the same time, going back to FDR's inaugural, how we're better off when we're together, and interdependence is what we need. I had spoken at Carnegie Hall not long before we were shut down, on February 29th, I think it was, and whenever they said something about their friendship, the two of them, Clinton and Bush, the audience erupted in cheers. You know, when Bush said, I'm the brother of another mother, you know, or, you know, he's such a gifted politician, he beat my father, I hated him then, and now he's my friend. People are yearning for that sense of unity in a crisis. It's the most important thing a leader can do, is to make us feel we're one during these difficult times.
And look, President Trump has made clear he has not chosen to call past presidents and will not. He says he leans against doing that. And as you note, all these other presidents have. In terms of the message of partisanship, though, or nonpartisanship, I don't think there's anything controversial in what George W. Bush said. It was the opposite of controversial. Yet President Trump, I think, chose to take it as an implicit rebuke of him, and he put a statement out that said, quoted a Fox News commentator, he said, where was he during impeachment calling for putting partisanship aside? And the president himself said he was nowhere to be found in speaking up against the greatest hoax in American history. So when George W. Bush calls for empathy and no partisanship, President Trump responds with, what, partisanship? It was odd.
Well, you know, I think what is responding there is one of the things that old Abe Lincoln used to say is you've got to put past resentments aside. You know, he had the normal human feelings that we all do of envy or jealousy or anger or resentments, but he said if you allow those feelings to fester, they're going to poison a part of you. And the resentment of what President Bush didn't do, perhaps in protecting him during the impeachment thing, just came right to the surface, instead of his being able to connect to the same thing, just as our other presidents have. I mean, when John Kennedy came in and the Bay of Pigs was a fiasco, he asked Eisenhower, his predecessor, to go to Camp David with him. When Harry Truman came in, he looked to Hoover, who FDR, not his finest hour, had not had Hoover to the White House. He finally invited Hoover. On the first train, Hoover came, gave him advice about famine in Europe. And then President not get my guys mixed up, President LBJ, not Lincoln, when he went to Independence, Missouri, and he gave the first Medicare card to Truman because Truman had first suggested it, and Truman was being forgotten down there. And LBJ, I hope I won't be forgotten too. How much good it is to allow yourself to feel part of that presidential club. They're the only ones who've experienced what you've experienced.
It's a font of wisdom that should be tapped into. Doris Kearns Goodwin, thanks so much for being with us this morning. Really appreciate it.
I'm so glad always to be with you. Thank you.